Hello and welcome to another episode of the djproject Criterion Collection. And here we're going to talk about Spine 227, Le Corbeau, directed by Henri-Georges Clouzot, 1943. Now, I actually was interested in this title for a fairly superficial reason, I have to say, and it was because of the artwork. It was, I mean, look at that. Isn't that... But at any rate, and I also found out it, now before I really had the chance to get it, it went out of print in 2007. And interestingly enough, it was after that time I saw it on the shelf, and so because I had an interest in it and because I knew that it was hard to get, I wanted to get it right away. So actually what I got was the first printing of it. And then it briefly went back in print, and now it's back out. And yes, it's all because of Studio Canal. And in revisiting the film, I admittedly didn't find it all that compelling, and it feels a little bit mediocre, and I know I'm not alone on this. Other people have said the same thing. But that really being... well, and I think it's... and I was trying to figure out exactly why I find it kind of underwhelming. And that quite possibly it's mainly one of those... I think it's a quality, it's a feature quality rather than a bug. In other words, there's something about it that's not necessarily makes it compelling. That's probably what it comes down to. Another possibility is that this actually was Clouzot's second film as a director, and it's, when you compare it to his later films, certainly the films he would be best well known for, like Diabolique and The Wages of Fear, there's kind of a big difference in quality. But I mean, it's not... I don't want to make it out that it's a bad film, by no means, but it just feels a little bit mediocre. Now, all that being said, I think what does make this film particularly interesting is the historical context. This was... well, first off, a little bit about the story, and this is one of those ones. While you don't have the disclaimer at the end saying "please do not spoil for those who haven't seen," I do want to keep the story a little bit more on the vague side. So which may fortunately lead into one of those relatively quick and dirty reviews. But anyways, the basic story is a doctor who actually is known for administering abortions, in so many words. Although I think it's... no, actually, he is explicitly accused of that, so that they don't dance around that issue. But anyway, he becomes the victim of a series of poison pen letters that are sent not only to him, but to a lot of other people in town. And so the question is, who done it? And not only is... well, he's the main victim and everything kind of centers around him, it's also one of those things where other issues and other discretions are made public. And this, of course, sends everybody into a bit of ill at ease. And it would only stop until the mystery is found. So basically, it's a fairly, it's a mystery thriller, is what it is. And I think the thing I have to say that what's interesting about the film itself is it's I guess it's moral complexity. It's not, while there is this sense of righting or wrong, it also is not as black and white as it may seem. It's all it's all tinged with bittersweetness and everything, and it does make it interesting in that regard. And also, I think there is a kind of misanthropy, where everybody is there's no real character in it where you feel like you're rooting for it. You're almost like seeing everybody kind of undo each other, which then gets into a little bit of the historical context. Clouzot, in his career, he started off as a screenwriter before the war. And then after the war, well, no, sorry, not after the war, but after the Nazis invaded and then occupied France, he was kind of in a bad situation where, on the one hand, I think he wanted to continue to filmmaking, but he also felt uncomfortable working for Continental Films, which was a new film company that was established by the Nazis in France. And he wasn't... Well, he wanted to continue to work in filmmaking. He also was in... he also wanted to eat and survive. And so he reluctantly joined Continental Films, I think initially as a screenwriter, but then eventually became a director. This was, like I said, this was his second film. And this was actually the film that caused a lot... Well, interestingly, it was a fairly popular film when it came out. I think... I forget exactly what the box office totals were or what kind of business it did, but it was fairly well received in terms of box office attendance. But this was one of those films where it seemed like it pissed off everybody. It pissed off the Catholic Church because it was so morbid in its character portrayals. It pissed off the Vichy government because the whole poison letter device was seen and understood as a critique of Nazi occupation, and with using anonymous letters and informants and surveillance and raising suspicion and so forth. So the Vichy government didn't like it for that. For the implied marks against the one Nazi France and the other Nazi France. Really, it's kind of amazing that there was this split, because it almost felt like there was really little to no difference. I know that the Vichy regime was more to try to keep some semblance of an independent France, but really it's just another little puppet thing. But anyways, so the Vichy government didn't like it. The French resistance didn't like it because this was... I forget exactly why they didn't like it, but basically it pissed off everybody. And this was actually the film that got Clouzot banned from filmmaking after the liberation of France, and initially it was for life. And again, because he did this film through Continental Films, and it was also perceived that this was a critique of the French people in general. I think Clouzot at the time, I think it's come out that it was more of a critique of France and the provinces and that sort of attitudes. And again, he's kind of viewed as a misanthrope. So it's certainly, so in that case, it's definitely a feature rather than a bug. But of course, the irony out of all this is that although the film was well received, he also got fired by Continental Films for making this film. So basically, this was, in some respects, it's kind of an albatross, or it could have served as an albatross, or it could be seen as a kind of albatross in his career. But anyways, so like I said, after the war, or after the occupation, and subsequent liberation, after the liberation of France, He was banned. Initially, it was for life, but then due to hundreds of pleas from various Frenchmen, which included Jean Cocteau and Jean-Paul Sartre, the sentence was lowered to 2 years. And interestingly, Clouzot never made any kind of apology or appeal in regards to this decision. I guess he felt like he didn't really have to. And I guess he also felt that the film could really speak for itself. And I think that was part of what gave him that lower sentence, as it were. So, and I think now it's considered, it's certainly considered interesting because of the historical context around it. I would even add more that I think what makes the film interesting in the context of Clouzot's career is that it was the earliest glimpse of what made Clouzot a worthwhile filmmaker to look at. And that is he knew how to make a film very well. You have setups and payoffs. You have lots of interesting twists and turns to get you engaged in the story. There really isn't a wasted moment, and it tends to surprise you, and even after you haven't seen it for a while. But it also, interestingly enough, has a kind of repeat value to it, where once you know how the whole story plays out and what exactly happened, it compels you to go back and reevaluate it and see, oh, okay, and there were some setups and foreshadowings that were there all along, much in the same way that Diabolique has that. And so I think this is what. So in that sense, I think. I mean, it sounds like I'm giving it a harsh review, and I mean, it's not a film that I just go, wow, this is all great and everything. It's something that I guess I respect and maybe admire more than I actually love. There are some films that I love more than others. There's certainly films that I don't like more than others. So I think in some respects, it does feel kind of mediocre. And while I said that there really isn't a wasted moment, there are some moments where it does feel like it kind of drags a little bit, or it feels somewhat extraneous. But even so, I think what does make the film interesting is as a film in its own right, it works as a mystery thriller, very much so. And then in terms of Clouzot's career, it would one give you a sense of what he could do later on, and also because it was such a controversial film for his career, it caused a lot of ire. It caused him to be fired from Continental Films. It led to his ban from filmmaking. It pissed off a lot of groups for all kinds of reasons, and you have to respect that. If a film can cause so much derision and so much anger from all kinds of people, including people that are opposing to each other, you have to give it some credit that it goes. You can't accuse it as being one-sided. That either it just is all around offensive, or I think even better, that it speaks to something a little bit deeper, or that there's a little bit more to it than just one side versus another. So, yes, this title is out of print. I don't know. I think it's one of those titles. If you get a chance to see it, if you know somebody who has it, or you happen to find it somewhere, I would say try to give it a viewing, but at the same time, I mean, you don't have to absolutely rush to see it. It's not one of those films that I consider one of the 1,001 films that you must see before you die. So if you don't end up seeing it, then it's no total loss. Which again, you kind of ask, well, if you don't like that much, why do you still have it? Well, I got it. I saw it. I seized the opportunity, and it's there on my shelf. And again, you gotta love that artwork. I mean, it's just there's something kind of I don't want to say demented, but just something kind of unsettling about it. So yeah, like I said, quick and dirty review. Le Corbeau. And until next time, take care.